Long, long ago, a Brahman family used to live near Hastinapur. The family consisted of four persons: the Brahman himself, his wife, his son, and the daughter in law. The Brahman picked out the grain left over from the field after the peasants had reaped the crop of the field. The family of the Brahman depended on that grain to live upon. Brahman, as well as all the members of that family, were contented, great devotee to God, and considering the guests as God. Once, famine befell upon in the country. There was no production in the field at all. In spite of roaming in the field in search of grain throughout the day, the Brahman did not find the grain to appease the appetite of even single one. But whatever the grain was possible to be available, the Brahman lady used to grind it, and having offered it to God, shared it among all the members to eat. Due to continuous fasting, all the members of the family had become feeble and weak. One day, the Brahman went on wandering in the field. At last, he could find a little grains of barley. After coming back home, the Brahman lady ground the barley. It turned to be a handful of flour. Having offered it to God, they had themselves shared it and sat down to partake of it. At the very time, a hungry Brahman guest happened to come at the door. With due respect, the Brahman greeted him, washed his feet, and offered him the share of the flour of his own self to eat. How was it possible to appease the Brahman's appetite with a pinch of flour? The Brahman lady came there, gave her own share also. The Brahman's son too gave his own share. And then in the last, the Brahman's daughter-in-law also came to offer her own share to the Brahman. The Brahman said to the daughter-in-law, "Daughter, you have grown too weak due to appetite. If you continue your fast any longer, your life will be in danger. Don't offer your share." The daughter-in-law of the Brahman said, "Father, a guest is in the manifestation of God Himself. The guest worship is a very virtuous act. It is not possible to allow a guest remain hungry, having food stuff with me for the sake of my own life. How it is proper to do so? I am following the same holy track which you elder people showed to me." The daughter-in-law of the Brahman offered her own share of the flour to the Brahman. The Brahman consumed even that flour and demanded water. When the Brahman intended to provide water to him, he was astonished to see that his hut was full of divine light, and on the mat made of sacred grass provided to the guest to sit on, Dharmaraj himself was sitting there instead of the guest. By the merit of his virtuous act, the Brahman, including his family members, went to the abode of God, seated in a chariot. A mongoose lived there in the hut of the Brahman. That mongoose continued lying in the hut that day. When the guest had chucked the flour into his mouth, a few little particles of the flour had fallen on the ground. By the touch of his body to the particles of the flour, half of the body of the mongoose turned to gold and acquired the power to speak in human language. When in the Indraprastha, Dharmaraj Yudhishthir performed a very big sacrifice, that mongoose came up there after the completion of the sacrifice and kept lying on that ground, but the remaining part of his body did not turn to gold. That mongoose narrated the story to the Pandavas. The king Yudhishthir is a highly righteous, generous, and worshipper of guests. Yet the effect of the particles of the flour of that Brahman is somewhat unparalleled. This big sacrifice cannot stand equal to the particles of handful of the flour of the Brahman.